Okay, another thing to imagine. Let's say you were somewhere like at a party and you were all having a good old time when all of a sudden a hand came out from nowhere. Well, the weird thing about this hand was it was just a big hand with nothing attached. And then it started writing. And it wrote these words, Minnie, Minnie, Tinkle, you Farsi. That would be pretty spooky, don't you think? And everyone looked and think, what does this mean? There's a hand, and it wrote on the wall, the finger of God. Oh, wonder, wonder. It would be pretty spooky, and it actually happened. It happened, it's recorded in Daniel 5 of the Bible. And it talks about a time that we're going to be studying when we're going into lesson 29 of the Persian Empire taking over the city of Babylon, taking over the Babylonian Empire. This is just a turning point in history, and here it's recorded with this weird thing, this finger on the wall. Well, let's go back. Let's go back a little bit, okay? Lesson 29, and lesson 28 kind of run together. We have to review about what was happening there, because you see, the Babylonian captivity of Israel happened in 3 stages, where Nebuchadnezzar went in and destroyed Jerusalem in the last siege. But each siege he went in, he took captives and brought the Israelites as slaves into Babylon. And the book of Daniel describes many things. And we see that Nebuchadnezzar ends up worshiping the true and living God. And we already saw that. And he also starts off, he has this dream, and Daniel interprets this dream that kind of is a historical marker of what's going to come of all of these different empires. And they all have to do with Israel, from the head of gold to the arms of silver to the brass chest, to the iron legs, all the way down to the toes with iron and clay. And a big, huge rock comes and tumbles down, destroys Jesus, right? That has to do with Jesus. Well, the book of Daniel is prophetic, and Nebuchadnezzar had a prophetic dream. And then Nebuchadnezzar also, he couldn't get over himself. And he built this huge, gigantic statue of himself and had everyone bow down to worship. And that's where we know that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego never bowed down. Well, Babylon, with 70 years prophesied by Jeremiah, that they would come to the exact date of 70 years. That they would be under the captivity of Babylon. And then they would be allowed to go back to Jerusalem. Well, how could this ever happen? Well, it happens all in this supernatural realm. On this day, the Persian Empire takes over, and then we see this Cyrus the Great shows up, this Persian king. So here we go. We have the writing on the wall. We have a party taking place, and this party is with the king's grandson. Nebuchadnezzar is gone now; he has died, and then his son is out to war, and we have his grandson, and his grandson's adult, and they're having this party, and the grandson says, "Let's go and get those, utensils that were in the Holy of Holies of the so-called Holy of Holies in the temple. Let's get the temple utensils and we'll start drinking out of them, and let's party up." And he was making fun of the God of Israel. And so he brings them out, and then that hand shows up on the wall. And he is so scared. In fact, it says he's so scared that he lost his bowels. And you can imagine what that means. But then he was calling out. He called the queen, which was his grandmother, the wife of Nebuchadnezzar, and she knew about Daniel. And so she says, "Oh, I know who can interpret what this says." So she brings Daniel in. And he doesn't request anything. He sees, oh my goodness, the time is about up. Something big is going to happen. And as he reads it, God gives him the interpretation. And the interpretation says, God has numbered your kingdom. You are weighed in the balances. That means God has weighed you, and you are found wanting. You are being judged otherwise. You are found wanting. Your kingdom is going to be divided and given to who? The Persians, the Medes and the Persians. And that happened. See, Babylon was impenetrable. Remember, they had all these walls, and they had all of these ramparts, and they had everything. No one could get in there. So how did Cyrus get in? Well, he figured what he had to do was to go under the walls. Go under. You see, the river flowed. The Euphrates River flowed under. Remember, they had to go under, and they built on top, and so the canals went under the city of Babylon. So what does he do? He diverges the river so that it isn't going under, and then he takes his army and walks right through, right up into the city, into Babylon. Comes right up into the palace, right in the midst of this party where they're all just drinking and thinking they're having a good time, making fun of the God of Israel. And the writing's on the wall, for sure, because Cyrus shows up with the Persians, and they end up taking over Babylon in one single night, a night in October. The party's over. Belshazzar's done for. And now we have a new leader. And this leader, very famous. In fact, today, if you go to Israel and go to the area of Jerusalem, and you'll see they have these shekels. That's their money. And on their shekel, they'll have an honorable shekel just made. On one side of the shekel, they'll have a face of Cyrus. See, they respected Cyrus because guess who's going to let him go back to rebuild the temple, back to Jerusalem? Who's going to go back and let Jerusalem be the capital again? Cyrus. But on the other side of the shekel, guess whose face is it? You would never, ever guess. You had a million guesses. It's the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. Why Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem and recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, where all of the Arab nations and everything would not do that. So in commemorate, they equated Donald Trump with Cyrus the Great. Well, two non-Jews, two leaders, that's kind of different, isn't it? Well, anyway, we're going to go on and we're going to discuss who is this Persian king? And why was he prophesied? And what was he like? And what was Persia like? We have a lot of questions. So hang in there. We're gonna go on into lesson 29.